Ammar, there is not a lot in Formula One that shocks me, but today is also not one of those times because who would have thought that Liam Lawson might be the wrong fit for the Red Bull seat? Who would have thought that perhaps Red Bull would do what they would normally do and at short notice just decide to get rid of their second driver? Not this guy, let's be honest. Two races is pretty impressive though. What do you reckon? What do you reckon to the whole thing? Is it Red Bull's fault? Is it Liam's fault? Is it Max's fault? Is it the FIA's fault? I mean, we can nearly always find a way to blame it on Mohammed bin Sulayem, but can we do that this time, Ammar? Please, sir, I must hear your say.
The thing that keeps catching my eye is it took them 2 races to make that decision. I mean, we had heard all these things about Liam beating Yuki and in F2, and there's some other times that were compared, and then never mind, we were wrong. And so let's get a few things on the table, right? First of all, this is not confirmed as of this recording, and so we should just add that cautionary tale. Although evidently it is, I don't know why Red Bull also do this thing where they're leaking it out to all the media outlets, but what are they? They're trying to have us warm up the bed, if you will.
Come on, let's be honest.
And what are they doing there?
The they in this is most likely going to be
Christian Horner,
Jay Verstappen.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, whatever. I mean,
because nearly all of this has come from the Dutch media, right? It came like the first was Eric van Haren from
True.
The Telegraph, right? That's the first place I heard it from. And there's a lot of the German and the Dutch correspondents that are like, well, yeah, I'm really close to this guy at Red Bull, and they told me this, and that's where this is all sort of perpetuating from. So I'm not sure Red Bull are so much a leaky ship as perhaps a leaky dam. And if anyone remembers the old fable of the little Dutch boy and the dam, you'll know what I mean. Anyway, I'm sorry.
A nail in the head. No, you're fine. This was perfect. Look, man, I think that this is all on Red Bull, really. There's no other way to slice and dice it, right? When we heard got official news of Checo Perez being let go, mind you, we're basically a year removed from Checo signing a 2-year extension, which this should have been the first of 2 years. So, first of all, hats off and congratulations to Checo Perez. He got his bag. He got the hell out. It's probably the best thing that could happen to him. And if there's anyone that's really happy, sort of sitting in the background and having a good laugh, that's got to be the Perez family. And I want to be right there with him. Like honestly, I just want to be a fly on the wall of that conversation between Checo and his dad when they're reading these things and they're like, oh man. Also, congratulations to Alex Albon. Congratulations to Pierre Gasly, Nick De Vries. All of these guys that have been outdone by.
Nick De Vries never got anywhere near an actual Red Bull.
That's true, but I mean the way of being canned was just the same way, no? So I mean all of these guys got to have their own group chat and do some emoji play, since that's what's going on these days. But anyway, I digress. Look, this is squarely on Red Bull's shoulders, right? Like this is something that they've brought upon themselves, and the one thing that they've done is they've managed to kill the confidence of one Liam Lawson, possibly forever. And I'm not sure what the recovery path looks like. Maybe it does look like there's a path there because it's only been 2 races. I suppose you could argue that they've kind of stopped the bleeding early on. They've also potentially put Yuki in a worst case situation where if he fails, then and this is his last year with Red Bull too, right? Or with Team Red Bull, whatever the umbrella sort of company is. And so there's a potential that they might have figured out a way to ruin 2 drivers' careers, not one. But this is squarely on them, Shez. They should have never done this, right? It is one thing to get driver decisions incorrect. That happens all the time. Red Bull have known to be playing with driver moves and driver seats, perhaps much more than those of us that play fantasy F1. Like, I mean, they're even way quicker at that than we are. And we all love transactions, but Red Bull has their sort of claim to fame outside of the championships is this thing where they've been ruthless about, kicking people out of the seat. I mean, Drive to Survive, everything kind of points to that. They've created this sort of aura around them. So it's very fitting that they would be doing this right now. And I'll give credit to your guy Ted Kravitz for asking the sort of the viral question, which now seems like prophetic in terms of how he asked that question about, hey, this is why you paid Checo off to get a P20 in one race qualifying and P18. And by the way, Liam was almost lapped in China. Like we kind of didn't get to see that in the midst of everything else that was going on. So clearly he was not ready for this. But clearly there was another guy who was ready that should have been in that seat to begin with. And now we're gonna have it.
So I would contest that there is clearly a fine line between ruthlessness and stupidity, because that seems to be what's happened here. Like it wouldn't take a rocket scientist to tell you that Liam Lawson was not the best bet for that drive when you had Yuki Tsunoda in the other V-carb seat last year as it was. I just want to remind everyone, I'm going to flash these up again, but these are the super times from the 23-24 season and the 11 races that Liam and Yuki had against each other. Liam was faster than Yuki on one occasion out of 11 at the US Grand Prix 2024. There was no other occasion in which he was ahead of Yuki in qualifying. And before anybody says, oh, but Liam outraced him, well, no, you have to factor in the fact that V-Carb and Racing Bulls currently have the worst strategic nous on the pit lane. And that takes some doing when you've got Ferrari on the grid as well. Sorry, man. I had to throw some shade at your way.
Why is Ferrari catching us straight today? Like there's not a day goes. Oh my goodness!
Every day, Ferrari needs to catch some strategic.
There's a real Lewis Hamilton fan in Tifosi land now. There you go.
But this situation predates even the Yuki Liam debate of last year, because that was inane in and of itself, because there was a driver that should have been in that car already. And yet there he is, smiling to himself, going, thank God I'm in a Williams right now. That guy is Carlos freaking Sainz. Because what was the nonsense about, their dads won't get on, or they might have a little bit of disagreement? Who cares? You guys came third in the Constructors' Championship last year. Surely getting a better position in the Constructors or defending Max's Drivers' Championship with two cars up the front is more important than trying to safeguard Max against some kind of perceived acrimony between himself and Carlos Sainz Jr. It's a load of utter tosh. And that brings me to my next complaint. Who is making these decisions, Ammar? I don't think we have to look very far. Go for it. Name and shame, my friend. Name and shame.
Mr. Horner and Mr. Marko.
And
I think they're making decisions.
And I would argue that Helmut Marko. Look, honestly, we don't often actually come on this channel and berate Helmut Marko. Certainly not as much, I think, as we could.
We should. Let's do it. Let's do it.
On this occasion, Helmut Marko is essentially in charge of the Red Bull Driver Academy, right? He's an independent force, apparently separate from the Red Bull Racing entity. And yet, can you think, Ammar, of one good driver decision that he has made with regard to either promoting into Racing Bulls or promoting up to the Red Bull senior team in the last 5 years?
None.
Can you think of an absolute top-notch talent that he has brought into Formula One in the last 5 years?
Nope, none. None.
So
and isn't it true that Max actually came through the Mercedes Academy?
Exactly.
Isn't it true? Right? So there's that too. Just so everyone is aware, right? Yeah.
But I'll put it a different way. One of the German correspondents in a who works for motorsport.com, I think, I forget the name, I'll find it and I'll put a link in the description, but one of the German correspondents has basically said, look, this is what Marko wants. Marko, all he wants is for Max to win a 5th drivers championship. Okay, that's the sole end to all of this. And therefore, Red Bull are deliberately hamstringing themselves by getting drivers that are below par, even in their own estimation, because they don't want them to match up to Max Verstappen. But I don't even think that that is the major issue here, because as Max has said, Max is angry, I think, at the moment, and he's made a big point of saying, look, getting rid of Liam Lawson at the moment is a bad idea because that's not the problem. You're scapegoating the second driver for the deficiencies of something else, the technical team. That, I think, is where we need to move on to next. Although, Helmut, we're going to come back to you, mate, because I just don't understand what his role is there for anymore. He does not do his job properly. The Red Bull Driver Academy is an absolute mess. And what was once the pioneering force in Formula One in terms of finding new talent has been overtaken by everybody else, including Ferrari. But we'll come back to them. We'll come back to Helmut. We'll come back to Helmut. The technical team. Ammar, tell me about the car. Why is it that we are sitting here having to watch another driver get kicked out of Red Bull when even Max is saying that the car is not drivable anymore?
And Max said the Racing Bulls were actually a better car to drive. No, that was something what he said. I'm paraphrasing him there a bit. I think you hit the nail on the head. I think that this is less about the drivers and more about the technical team and by extension the organizational structure as well. One of the reasons why your guy, who is the GOAT of F1 car designing in Adrian Newey left was because no, there you go, was leaving because of all of the chaos. And as he pointed out in his interview, it didn't feel like he had the type of say that he wanted. And now we can sit up here and debate whether he would have been able to get on top of the issues that they're having right now. I have to believe that they will. And what would the outcome of that have looked like? I have no idea. But they certainly would have been more competitive. The fact that Max is struggling with this car, and let's be very fair, Red Bull have got bailed out by Ferrari on 2 occasions, both in Australia on account of their own issues that you pointed out ahead, and definitely in China where they should have kept Max Verstappen behind them, but they couldn't figure out the car. And of course, at the end of the day, it wouldn't have mattered anyway. But they've got bailed out by that because Max should be much further down the order. And by the way, the Oscar Piastri spin in Australia also kind of gave Max that P2, which he wouldn't have gotten. We can agree on that. So the reality is that the car has been struggling a lot more than what's being led on, and Max is driving in a certain way. We know that Max likes his car to be very pointy, right? So pointy at the nose, doesn't matter how much it wiggles in the rear, and he's able to get on top of it. And now the narrative I've been hearing over and over again is it doesn't work with the other drivers, as if, look, Max is one of one, arguably one of the greatest in the discussion for Mount Rushmore of all-time Formula One drivers, all of the above. But you cannot tell me that there is no other driver that cannot work with that style of driving to the extent where they're finding themselves plumb last at the end of the grid. Like there has to be something way more than just that for that to happen. And to your point, Shez, they do not have the technical team that can come up with it. They cannot find a solution that can work both well for that second driver. And I would argue that they keep saying that they're designing the car for Max, but it keeps getting worse and worse according to Max. So maybe they should have got a Carlos Sainz in there, or maybe even left Checo and listened to him a little bit more to see if they could bring that balance. And we've seen time and time again with these generation of cars that they have a shorter operating window, and you have to get it right. And Ches, one last thing before I turn it over to you. They have people from Red Bull gone over to McLaren, right? Your guy, Rob Marshall, over there, right? He's gone and he set up what is essentially an Adrian Newey 2.0 over there. And Adrian Newey himself has gone to Aston Martin, and I expect them to make some sort of late season surge too, just by the very fact that they're there. Ferrari are getting on top of their sort of design issues, although last 2 races are not a good example of.
But none of those are because of a design issue.
Correct.
They're just not.
The results is what I mean. Yeah.
Their race team isn't exploiting.
And then Mercedes have James Allison, and they have. So what Red Bull do not have right now is somebody who can go step to step with them. And so, yes, you're right. The second driver.
Ultimately, whose fault is that? Like, I will contend and argue to the hilt with anybody that says that Red Bull are basically building a car for Max. That is just like Mark Hughes put it really well in an article toward the end of last year after Liam Lawson had been announced. He said that it's physically, technologically, ideologically impossible for a team to basically go, well, these are the traits that this driver has. We're going to mold our car to just do what that driver does. That's not how it works. It's always the other way around. The team will build the fastest car that they can. And they will do that based on data from the wind tunnel, from CFD, from the sim. And then they will, if one of their drivers can exploit that car and get pace out of it, they will continue to develop down that route because that driver continues to get pace out of it. And that's what Max has continued to be able to do. But as you say, Ammar, he is one of one. Just listen to Alex Albon in the High Performance podcast. Driving that car is like playing Call of Duty on a mouse with the sensitivity turned up to the absolute maximum. You sneeze on the steering wheel, it turns. That's how difficult it is to drive. Max has been able to exploit it, but even that level of talent has got to a point where he can't even handle it anymore. Again, I think the reasons for why he's struggling now go a bit beyond the team just adding front downforce, but that is how they've got themselves into this position. And my contention here is that if they had somebody like Rob Marshall, somebody like Adrian Newey that was able to bring together a little bit of the nous from the driver's point of view, not just from an engineer and an aerodynamicist's point of view, bring in understanding from different areas of the organization and meld them together to make a balanced car, you wouldn't be in this position. But they are so lacking in ideas that the only thing they've got now is to just keep barreling down this one route. And the travesty of all of it is that because nobody will point a finger at Pierre Vacher and his team, the poor drivers are getting scapegoated for the technical team's failings. And Ammar, I'm gonna make a statement here because I think that Red Bull has been the leakiest of leaky ships since all of the nonsense with the WhatsApp messages at the beginning of 2024, right? Despite them having that ridiculous level of dominance at the beginning of the season, that has led to walkouts from key technical staff, key operational staff. It's left the madhouse to be run by the inmates. That's how I would classify Christian Horner and Helmut Marko, the two most insane people left running the whole department.
Yeah.
And they're making decisions that make absolutely no sense. I've heard people say, sack Horner, sack Marko. Fine, do it. But all of your good people have already left
Gone.
the ship. So what are you left with? This team is going down the drain. And the only thing that is masking their deficiencies is Max Verstappen. And even he is getting to the point where he can no longer do that. He is not going to be here in 2026. I have never been more sure of it.
Which is, I think the thing is that Red Bull got found out finally this year on track, right? And this started to happen after Miami last year, and they were able to run out the clock last year. And I think their strategy this year was we're going to do essentially the same thing, but over the course of 26 races, we're going to rely on you, Max, because you are Max Verstappen, and you're going to make anything happen. And the reality is, even as God tier as Max is, there are limits to all of this. And again, we keep seeing over and over again how even the McLaren is difficult to drive on the race weekend or in qualifying when the balance is shifted from here to there a little bit. It seems like, as you say, you might sneeze a little hard and that might turn everything away. And so given the small margin for error, you are right in saying that this requires an all hands on deck type of teamwork. And the reality is Red Bull do not want to use that second driver in any credible way to bring any level of performance improvements, any level of technical changes. And then, of course, they do not have the personnel there anymore who can do that, which they have to blame for themselves. They absolutely do, Shaz. And I think here's the thing.
Mm.
When we were talking about everything that was happening a year to date with the WhatsApp saga and everything that was going behind the scenes, it all got masked because of winning on track. And as we say, winning is the great eraser. It erases everything. The reality is that the crumble, crumble, crumble has been coming. And Max is sort of the last piece of the puzzle. The second he pulls out and either decides to take a sabbatical or go somewhere else, it's game over because they have nothing. Shaz, one of the things that is in the biggest indictment on Red Bull is that they tried to bring Daniel Ricciardo in last year. And remember all the saga that was going around then? Like it feels a little bit forgotten in all of this Yuki Tsunoda, Checo Perez kind of thing. But they were actively trying to put Daniel in that second seat when they had already signed Checo to a 2-year contract too. So we're kind of forgetting that. And so the reality is they never thought of Yuki in a positive light anyway. And now the decision that they're making is so, I'm going to say it, it's so stupid because this whole time you had a chance to put Yuki in that seat as early as a year to the date. They could have done that. I'm talking about before they renewed Checo for 2 years. They didn't do that then. And now they're going to do it in this sort of last year of the Honda partnership. Yes,
Omar,
there's financial compensation, but it's the dumbest thing
it's
I've
also
seen.
massively unfair on both of these drivers. Liam
Correct.
Lawson is essentially going to have his career wrecked
It's
because
done.
he's going
Yep.
back to racing bulls now. And poor old Yuki, even if he does have the style to make that car work, he's had no laps in that car. He's had no preseason testing. He's had no practice sessions. He's going to get no sim time. It's literally boom, in you go. Do what you can. He's going to get FP1 and FP2 and FP3 in Japan, and then that's it. And it's going to be in front of his home crowd. That is the worst thing about this. Is that the minute he gets out qualified by Liam Lawson in that racing bull is going to be in front of his home fans, and I genuinely cannot forgive Red Bull for doing that. I'm praying that Yuki somehow makes it out the other side. Another thing I just want to quickly say is that Red Bull made a big point of saying that we knew that there were issues as far back as Spain 2023.
That's right.
When Sergio Perez was sitting there going, "This is not working for me." Okay, and at that point, you could use the argument that if one of your drivers is getting the most out of that car and getting the results that Max was getting, then fine, keep going down that direction. Because I think that if they had not gone down that route, then the only way to make the car more drivable would have also made the car slower, and then they would have, yes, the other driver would have been a bit closer to Max, you'd expect, but the overall performance of the car would go down, right? So they would both be
Yeah.
fighting a bit further back, and you
Sure.
don't want that. So you keep going down this route. But at some point, they've reached this stage where, because they've lost all of their personnel that would have been able to drag them back, I don't think they even know how to build a car that would help the second driver, because that was the aim of this season, was to build a more drivable car. And
And
yet
it's
Max
anything
is
but
out
that.
here saying it's
Yeah.
even worse than it was before. This is
Yeah.
this is an undrivable balance, and it's it's
And
just
and the other reality is that in 23 they had virtually no competition. They had no that could have been the year where they could have taken the said step back, as you pointed out, and still been fine because I mean, there would still have been a difference between Checo and Max, and to be honest, no one else was there. I mean, Ferrari were taking a step back with Fred Vasseur kind of coming in there. Mercedes had no clue what they were doing there, and McLaren had yet to come to the forefront, so they could have done it. Yeah, and you're 100% right. And Chez, you know what? This year they're about to get shown out even more because guess who's at the party? All the other three teams are there. Yes, Ferrari had a pretty embarrassing weekend, but the reality is that the car is there and they have said they have a larger operating window that they'll figure it out at some point. And the reality is Red Bull,
yeah,
they just don't look like they have it. So they simply don't. So
right. Okay, let's call this one, bring this one to an end. I think what we are seeing, Omar, is that the only thing that is keeping Red Bull relevant is the fact that they have Max Verstappen in their team, and And this goes back again to the reality, the truism of Formula One, that Adrian Newey turns up, he will win you a championship. As soon as he leaves, you're done. And that seems to be what's happening at Red Bull right now. I can hear Dr. Obbs, our friend, your friend, everyone's friend, in my ear right now going, what are you talking about? There's still talented engineers at Red Bull.
It's only Helmut Marko, right? He's doing all of the winning.
Exactly,
He's been doing it.
Exactly. If there are any engineers left at Red Bull, show them to me. Now's your time, people. Anyway, on that note, we'll leave it. Please like, please subscribe, please leave us a comment. We'll read every single one. We'll reply to as many as we possibly can, and we will see you guys in the next one.
Later.